Hello and welcome to Adapt, Pivot, and Persist, which is a four-part series for career reinvention amidst recent layoffs and the current climate. I am Michelle Jones, one of the members of the Adapt, Pivot, and Persist team from the Cary Business School. And I would just like to thank you all for attending this evening. This is our fourth topic on actionable networking. And this is the final topic out of our four-part series. All of the previous topics have been recorded and are posted on the webpage that was shared in the chat and that you access to register for this one. So if you haven't seen the previous recordings, by all means, they all build on each other. These topics aren't siloed and independent. So all of them talk about very similar things and building upon each other as a topic. So go back, rewatch those. This session will be recorded and shared there. And we have one more session, which we will talk about at the end. So thank you all. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our three panelists tonight.
So if we can get started with the slides, I will introduce myself. My name is Laura Fajin Ribeiro. Maybe some of you know me. I am the Senior Assistant Director of Life Design for the Advanced Academic Programs. So if you are an AAP student, I'm your Life Design educator. If you are an AAP alum, you are welcome to come to me. If you are not an AAP student or AAP alum, it's okay. You can also reach out. You're welcome to. It will be my pleasure to connect with you. Stacy, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Stacy Mitchell. I'm Assistant Director of Life Design for students with international perspectives here at the Life Design Lab. So I work to support mainly our international students as well as students who are interested in studying abroad. A pleasure to be here, and thank you all for being here with us tonight. I'll pass it over to Antonia.
Hi, everybody. My name's Antonia Nichols, and can you guys hear me okay? Yes, okay, great. I'm Antonia Nichols, and I am a ethical AI trust and safety officer working here for a boutique consulting firm. And in previous lives, I have done all kinds of things, including technology, I've done private equity, and I've done a lot of management consulting. And in all of those lives, networking has played a major role. And I'll just say for the record, I am a raging introvert. And so one thing about networking is that you don't have to be extroverted to be a very successful networker. So this is just going to be a conversation around how networking can be something enjoyable and empowering and fun for everybody. So I'm looking forward to getting started with this program. And thank you, Laura and Stacey, for having me. So let me just see if I can get my slides to advance. There we go. So if you would like to drop your LinkedIn profile into chat, feel free, you can do that, and I'll put mine in at the end as well. So you can feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you'd like. So some of the conversations that we're going to...
Antonia,
Laura.
Let me do a brief thing.
Please
here.
do.
Yeah, just a brief thingy. So yes, please include your LinkedIn in the chat. This is a great opportunity. Maybe you don't see the purpose of it right now, but later it will be great to exchange, to connect on LinkedIn, and maybe somebody who you meet here, one of the speakers today, you could connect with them on LinkedIn, continue the conversation. And I just want to address a few things. So think about connecting on LinkedIn as planting a seed, hence the image that we are sharing, this beautiful, calming, slow image that gives you a sense of what networking can be. These connections, this seed could grow into a valuable professional relationship. Networking doesn't always start with a formal introduction. It can be as simple as adding someone after an event like this. So before we dive into today's sessions, I want to pause and offer a warm welcome to everyone here. If you're navigating a career pivot, facing job loss, or sitting with uncertainty about what's next, know that you are not alone. These experiences can carry a heavy emotional load. We know that, and it's okay to acknowledge that. And so let's take a moment to recognize that it's perfectly human to feel a range of emotions in times like this. It can be maybe fear or grief, frustration, or even relief and curiosity. So let's now, with that shared understanding, let's reframe how we think about networking. Often, networking gets a bad reputation. It can feel transactional, but we try to think about it as transformative in life design. It can also feel like you're asking a favor, right? But that's not what we are talking about here. Networking at its best is not about asking for a job. It's about reconnecting with people, offering your own insights and value, and being genuinely curious about others. And of course, I'm just saying this, but Antonia is the expert here, so she will tell you much more about it. Think about it as planting seeds, and you may not get immediate results, or you might get a situation like when my cat pulls out all the plants I seeded. That's okay. You can start over. But, you know, everything will lead you somewhere. So take this as an opportunity and think about it as a pivoting opportunity, maybe considering other industries or exploring something new. This is a mindset shift that can make a world difference, and you are not starting over, you are building forward. So now I will let you continue, Antonia. Sorry about that.
No, not at all. Thank you, Laura. Okay, so here's what we're going to go over today, and Stacey and Laura and I are going to trade off on the slides. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is why networking matters more than ever in this moment in time. We're going to talk about some basics of networking, some one-on-one, and how to make it rewarding and pleasurable for you guys. We're going to have a conversation around reassessing and rebuilding your network, and then we'll talk about a little wrap-up, a commit to 2 networking actions. There's an exercise in here. It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to turn it over to Stacey for the next couple of slides.
Thank you so much. So the very first thing, if you could go back, please. Thank you. So the very first thing that I'm going to ask everybody to do is to just take a moment and do a little reflecting. In the chat, if everyone would please share the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of networking. So when I say networking, what's the first thing that you think of? It might be a feeling, an emotion, an experience, a related word, a synonym, an antonym, whatever comes to mind when I say networking. I'm going to give you like 10 seconds, and then I'll read through some of our answers here. And I see exhausting, transactional, ugh, cringe, schmoozing. Love that word. Energy depleting, connecting. And continue to add in there as you will. You can go on to the next, to the image. Sorry. That's okay. So I'm seeing this kind of gamut of reactions, and that is typically what happens when I ask this question, right? It's everything from the super positive to the negative, from the yay to the ugh, right? And whenever I ask this question, what is networking for you? This image that I have on the screen here is what comes to mind. I like to share this image because it's something that has kind of helped me work through the limiting beliefs that I used to hold about networking myself, right? Entering this space and talking to people, and these thoughts entering our minds. Why am I here? What if nobody talks to me? What if I say something stupid? What if I'm completely unmemorable, right? These thoughts sometimes creep in. And for anyone feeling anxious or uncomfortable about networking, know that you're not alone. Know that these feelings are valid, especially now when so many of us are experiencing an unprecedented sense of uncertainty across industries and sectors, when the nature and landscape of work is constantly changing in unknown ways. Yet today, we invite you, right? We invite you into a radical reframe, okay? To think about networking not as work, but as opportunity, not as a chore, but as a chance to build meaningful relationships, not as transactional act, but as a reciprocal one, not as something to dread, but as something to look forward to. And if you'll advance, thank you. Before we dive into Antonia's session, I am going to address that question, why does networking matter more now than ever, even further? They say that 70 to 80% of jobs are filled through networking and referrals, that only 20 to 30% of job openings are publicly posted, and according to a recent LinkedIn article, that 80% of your job search should be networking, and only the remainder applications and searching itself. These numbers are eye-opening, but they're not meant to intimidate you. Rather, they demonstrate a reality, right? A reality that investing in relationships through actionable networking unlocks opportunities, including opportunities to get unstuck, to change gears, or to level up as a professional. With these points in mind, we hope that the rest of this workshop empowers you to take action toward growing your network so that you have it before you need it. So I'm going to pass things over to Antonia.
Thank you, Stacy. So before we get into networking, I was curious to see how people defined it. So this is what do you think networking is, and what do you think networking is not? So go ahead and you can drop that in the chat. So if you just say what I think networking is, and then I think networking is not. And Stacy, if you see some great ones, can you read them out for us?
Networking is meeting people, but it is not fun. Networking is curious learning. It's connecting.
That's awesome.
Networking is agenda driven.
Oh.
It's hanging out after work.
Hanging out after work, that's right. What if anything that it's not? People are still putting in the what is.
It's not truly being social.
Mm-hmm.
We have a very politely disagree that it's transactional.
Okay.
So it is not transactional.
It's not transactional. Okay, great. Well, you guys can keep dropping stuff in the chat, but I'll tell you how I define networking, what I think it is, and what I think it is not. This is how I think of networking. It's a cultivation of productive relationships for employment or business. It can also be personal, for personal things. It can be an exchange of ideas, information, or services, and it's also a place to open a door to possibility. One of the reasons why I particularly like this last bullet is that when I network, if I am going to a meeting with the purpose of finding a job, that is a chore. When I am going to meet a group of people to explore new possibilities for myself and for others, that's more fun. So that's my reframe in terms of what it is. And you guys have already put some of this in the chat, but what it is not is a one-way discussion, you presenting to somebody else or them telling you what to do. It's not a time to do a sales pitch, including a sales pitch of yourself. It's not a place necessary to share whatever is on your mind for a host of reasons. And it's usually not the place to close a deal. And I think when I was when I was in college and I was thinking about networking for the first time, my sense of it was that the goal of networking was to close the deal, AKA get a job. And one of the things that I've learned in my own career is that the goal of networking is really to create connection and less about, and the connections lead to those types of outcomes, but networking is not the place to land your gig. So we're going to talk about networking 101. We're going to go over the 3 C's of networking, and then my rules: know thy goal, know thyself, and know thy value. And this all goes into the storytelling around what networking is, and then we're going to do practice. Before I get into this, something I want to share with you is that one of the things that creates connection and engagement is storytelling. Humans are very wired for storytelling. And one thing about networking is it's just an opportunity to hear other people's stories and to tell your own. How you tell your own story and what you choose to share in the moment is where the art of networking comes in, which is one of the reasons why you want to know your goal, yourself, and your value. But really, it's the storytelling aspect and the storytelling listening aspect of networking is where the gold comes in, and also where the joy can come in, even if it's something that feels stressful. So let's talk about the 3 C's of networking, which are from Forbes magazine, not mine: connection, communication, and collaboration. Notice it does not say get a job anywhere on the slide, which is excellent. So connection is looking for connections between people and ideas. So it is connecting with people, but it's also connecting ideas, and being able to share those connections, developing formal and informal relationships. Another thing I like is recognizing and celebrating others, which is not something you typically think of when you're doing business networking, but it is an opportunity. And then listen for what's missing. Listening for what's missing in the conversation where you might be a contribution. In terms of communication, there's 2 parts, right? So you guys all of you probably know the adage, we get 2 ears and 1 mouth. So 2 ears, because listening is as critical as speaking, especially in networking. So listening attentively to what other people are saying and helping make connections, asking for input, posing good questions, and then watching people for nonverbal cues. And then collaborating is seeking out and celebrating opportunities to work together or to collaborate together, connecting other people, being discerning about where you can make the most impact, and then keeping your word and following up. So I'll tell you guys a quick story of a true story that happened to me earlier this year. So I moved about a year ago to DC from San Francisco, and I went to a networking event with a group of people, none of whom I'd ever met. And I didn't know who would be there. It was just an opportunity to connect with IT professionals. So in the course of the conversation I was talking to a man who had a company with a software company, and he was talking to me about doing software sales. I've never done software sales. I don't really want to do software sales, but he was very interested in me and my vibe, and he really wanted to talk about the possibility of this sales job. He had to leave because he was going back to Virginia, and about half an hour later, I met another gentleman who was in sales, specifically software sales. And I listened to what the second gentleman, his name is Ravi, was looking for. And then I went back and I reached out to the first gentleman, whose name is Arun. And I asked Arun exactly what he wanted out of that role, what he was really looking for, and Arun sent it to me. And he and I went to coffee. And after listening to what he had to say and what he was really looking for, I asked Arun, I said to him, look, I think I met somebody that might be a better fit than me for this role. Can I make the introduction? And he said, yes. And so I went back, and with the additional information, I introduced Ravi to Arun, not only as an intro on LinkedIn, but also I created an introductory paragraph about what the job entailed and why I thought Ravi was a good fit, so that Ravi was set up for success when he reached out to Arun. Long story short, Ravi was the front runner for the job. They decided not to move forward with the job, so Ravi didn't get hired there. But both of them are still in connection with me, and Ravi has sat down with me and said, "What do you want? What do you need? What can I do for you? Anybody I can introduce you to? Anything we can do? Let's have a conversation." And he's in London right now networking with some people that I put him in contact with. So the thing I want to leave you with is that when you're coming out of connection, communication, and collaboration is sometimes you don't know what the outcome is going to be. So it's great to be committed to these committed to these outcomes, but not attached. And it gives you a lot more freedom in your conversations, and you just never know how things are going to go. So one of the questions I have, it's a Chatterflow question, let me move this, is where's the unlikeliest place you've ever made a significant connection? You can drop that in chat. Doesn't have to be a work connection either. So this could be, where's the unlikeliest place you met somebody who you set up with your cousin, or where's whatever your locations might be. Go ahead and drop that in the chat. And while you do that, I'm gonna move on, maybe.
We have the
Okay.
hair salon, an airplane, a sailing
Yes.
race.
Nice.
In our first session, I said my kickball team, which is a true story.
That's awesome.
Yeah, a huge meditation course with thousands of people participating. That's really special, right? To make a close connection in such a large group.
That is amazing. One of the connections I made, I was hiking in Theodore Roosevelt National Park and I got lost. I ended up randomly hiking with some guy who was from Virginia. I was living in Kansas City at the time. And we got lost for 6 hours and it was pretty bad. And but we stayed in touch, and then but we found our way out, and then he went his way and I went mine, and then we talked every day for 6 years, and then he flew to LA or to San Francisco and drove me back with me across country when I moved out here. For the first, it was the first time we'd seen each other since 2017. So you never know. Anyway, the point is, it's good to know your goal, because before any event where you're going to meet other humans, especially professional events, it's good to know kind of what your goal is in going there. If you're going to a speed dating function, know what your goal is. You know, I'm going to have one date out of this thing. If you're going to a professional networking event, think about other things, think what you want to get out of that so that you're oriented and that you're generating that from the get-go. So when I'm preparing for a networking event, I ask myself some of these questions. What's my mindset going into the experience? Am I in the mindset of learning? Am I in the mindset of sharing? Am I in the mindset of connecting? What's this event about? And how do I want to show up in it? What am I listening for? Am I listening for a job? Am I listening to somewhere to connect for people? What I've been listening for lately are trends. What are the trends that are happening in government that aren't necessarily making the news? That's one of the things that I listen for in networking events right now. Who's going to be there? I'll tailor my message to who's going. So if it's a group of IT people, my message will be different than if it's a group of diplomats, for example, which is who I was hanging out with last week. What do I want to learn in the interaction? What do I really want to take away? How do I want to connect today? Do I want to connect as a job seeker? Do I want to connect as a subject matter expert? Do I want to connect as a newbie to DC, trying to learn what's going on? What's the lens through which I'm connecting? And what's one way I want to contribute to others? A lot of times for me, it's in that listening and connecting. So I'm usually looking for a way to contribute by making a connection to somebody else. And what's at least one thing I want to take away? Frequently for me, the one thing I usually put on that is that I want to meet at least one person I'd take for a drink. That's my thing. One person I'm interested in just talking to more. So because when you're focused on connecting, communicating, and collaboration, essentially every interaction is a chance to grow your network, a social interaction or a public one. And I think you guys, and people know this. I use dating a lot as an analogy to work networking, because it's very similar. People say you should go on the date anyway because you might meet the perfect person for your cousin or your brother or what have you. And that it's very similar to a networking event. Go in and explore, because you just don't know who you're going to meet and where they're going to play a role. So a question I'd ask you guys, I'm curious about, is what's the most unexpected thing you walked away with after connecting with somebody? This could be a physical object, it could be a recommendation, it could be a new friend, it could be your cousin's new girlfriend. Tell me some of the most unexpected things you left with after connecting.
Have information to share with other people.
Okay,
Right.
information is good.
We have a suggestion that maybe networking is more like going to meetups than online dating. LOL.
It definitely could be. Yes, all of those things are true. Networking is like it's all. Anytime you have an opportunity to connect with somebody, whether it's one-on-one or in a group, you're networking anyway. So I think a better way to think about it is you're networking more than you're doing anything else.
Mhm.
You're networking all the time. Okay, so this is the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is knowing yourself. So once you've made the connection, you've gone out, you've connected with a person, what are you going to tell them about yourself? And and more to the point, actually, before you even tell them about yourself, how do you know what you really want out of the interaction? And knowing what you want out of any networking interaction starts with this model, which is the Ikigai model. It's a Japanese model, and it is a model to find your purpose in life. So the Ikigai model looks at things like what's the intersection between what you love, what the world needs, what you're good at, and what you can be paid for. So what you love and what you can be paid for, it's frequently considered your passion. What you love and what the world needs is your mission. What you're good at and what the world needs is vocation. And what you can be paid for and what you're good at tends to be your profession. So I think when you think about networking, a lot of people operate here in this profession overlap. This is where you're focusing. But I have to say, and when you're only focused here, this is what can make those interactions feel very transactional. When you can bring in some of these other things, your passion, your mission, and your vocation, the conversations tend to not be so dry, and they tend to be a little more authentic and more interesting, quite frankly, for other people. Because when you go to, especially when you go to a big networking event where everyone says, "Well, what do you do and who do you work for?" And how many times you can have that conversation, you stop listening to what people are doing and who they work for. So when you can bring in some of these these things into your conversation, you're more memorable and the conversation is more fun. That said, tailor your personal messaging to the type of event and what you want to get out of it. And then hone your personal value proposition and tailor it to the event at hand. We're going to talk about personal value propositions a little bit later, but bear in mind that you have a personal value proposition no matter what environment you're in. Again, if you're at a networking event, you've got one, and looking for a job, you've got a personal value proposition. If you are on a date, you have another personal value proposition. And if you're getting together with a group of people socially that you don't know very well, but you're hoping to be friends with, this is also a separate value proposition. So keep it in mind, because you want to be articulating it in a natural way as part of your conversation. And the last thing I would say is play to your strengths and be authentic. Meaning you don't want to be too polished or too stilted, because people don't like it and they don't want to talk to you about it. And you also don't need to talk to everyone, but you do need to find the right people to talk to. It's this last bullet point that someone like me who's extremely introverted, this is one of the things that I focus on. When I go to a networking event, I tend not to talk to a lot of people when I go in, but what I am doing is listening. I'm wandering around through all of the groups of people. I'm listening to conversations. I'm listening to the speakers. I'm trying to determine where I can show up to demonstrate my strengths, be authentic, and make the most valuable connection I can. So what I find when I network is that I may only talk to 3 people at an event, but I can tell you that all 3 of them follow up with me on LinkedIn. So that to me is it's not the only way to do it, but if you're introverted, you can do quality over quantity, and if you're extroverted, then you can meet as many people as you want and still have these conversations. It just makes you intriguing, and it helps other people share what they're passionate about too, which is what people really want to be talking about anyway. So so now that you know where you're going and you have a sense of what you want to do when you get there, and you have a sense of some of your key talking points about what you're passionate about, what turns you on, but you now know that you're definitely going to a professional networking event where you have to talk about where you're looking for a job. These are 2 conversations that are good to know how to draft. This is the know thy value section. So the first one is know your ideal role type or the profession. What are you looking for? What kind of role are you looking for? Because ultimately someone will say, what are you looking for? I know you're looking for a job, what do you need? They're going to start thinking it through in their mind about where those things might be. So you want to be able to give people a succinct response. The other thing you want to know is your own unique value proposition, or what you might say your vocation. So the role is your profession, but the unique value proposition is your vocation, if you will. Why? Where's the value in what you do? So I help, fill in your company name, achieve these goals, and the value that I bring comes from XYZ. So I'm going to show you an example of an ideal role type thing. So if someone says, what do you do, or tell me about yourself, this is an example. I'm an eager learner with a finely tuned sense of risk. The finely tuned sense of risk is the strategic differentiator. I love uncovering problems and fixing leaks, whether it's helping my parents save $5,000 on their taxes or banking risk management. This is your go-to. And also it's your result, right? I help my parents save 5K. What kind of risks are you currently facing in your business? One of the best things that you can do is end your response with a question and ask and invite the other person to share what they are up to with you. This is an example. This is a technical example of a unique value proposition. I would say that if I were networking, I wouldn't go into this level of detail, but if I were interviewing, these are the interview questions I would want to have ready to go, okay? So I help mid-sized banks become better at detecting fraud, recovering funds. These are the things I've done. Value I bring comes from an extensive knowledge of emerging technologies, along with my ability to get things done. But I'd really love your thoughts on where my strengths could best be used in the current market. This invites them to engage with you on what you just said, but without feeling pressure. If I were in a networking situation, this last little bit takes the pressure off of someone feeling like you're pitching them, and gives and is a request for their expertise, which people love to give. So my recommendation is that you take a few minutes and we'll practice for your next professional networking event on these 2 things. And this we can do it as practice as if you were going to a conference. I'm going to show you how I respond to these 2 things based on my background, so you can see how I do it. One of the things that I try to do is I do try to inject a little humor and a little bit of play into my responses, because it's more fun for me and because other people appreciate it. So here's how I respond to mine. My LinkedIn profile says I'm a responsible AI trust and safety officer, but really I'm an expert generalist with a talent for making connections between people and ideas. I'm particularly interested in organizations who are looking to leverage technology in alignment with their organizational values. How are you doing it where you are? And then this is my unique value proposition. My day job is helping private and public sector organizations align emerging technology to their strategic goals and corporate cultures. But what I really am is a big tech nerd. and I'm that's passionate about organizational culture. I have a master's in org design, and I'm also older than I look. So I've worked across multiple sectors and industries and technology, private equity, and consulting. And my education is org design and AI, design thinking, strategic foresight, and ethics. Did I mention I'm a nerd? Yeah, I'm absolutely a nerd. So it's rare that I come across a situation I don't have a frame of reference for. And that's one of the things, which is good, because I think solving complex problems is super fun. And I love to solve them on behalf of my clients. What about you? So I don't know, so you guys just heard me pitch, but I just gave the person who asked me the question a whole bunch of places where they could hook in and ask me more or relate. And ideally, they also are happy to hear what I'm doing and they think it's fun and they're engaged. So if you guys want to take some time to think about your own ideal role type and your unique value proposition, you can take a minute to maybe write down a few things. Bear in mind that an ideal role type and a unique value proposition are not things that you just pull out, just do. I had to work and work to get down to these things, and I ran it by several people in a course that I took to get it super tight. And even this is not, if I were asking for a job, if I were looking for a job, my IRT would be different. I am thankfully employed, so it's different. So it's slightly different here. So have in your mind, be able to kind of talk about yourself in these terms so that people can start to think in their own minds about where they could connect you.
Antonia,
Yeah.
we do have a question
Yes, ma'am.
about the IRT. So if you want to go back
Go back.
one.
Yep.
So how do you bring up your IRT? So you gave the example of yours in a networking conversation, but without seeming like you're giving a sales pitch about yourself.
Okay. So so anytime you meet with somebody in this town in particular, but in any big town, you say, "Hi, I'm Antonia." And someone says, "Hi, I'm Joe." And then the next question is, "What do you do?" Right? That's always almost always the next question. What you do professionally is almost always everybody's go-to frame of reference for how they can categorize you. So it's a question that gets asked super early on. So if I were a Johns Hopkins graduate student, especially if I'm in a networking function where the assumption is you have a lot of people milling around looking for work, especially right now, usually what people say to me is like they'll look at my name, they'll look at my name tag, and they'll say, "Oh," so I work for a very small company called AIT, and nobody has heard of it. So they say, "Oh, what does AIT do?" And I say, "We are a boutique technology transformation consulting firm." And they'd say, "Oh, what do you do there?" And I say, "I'm a trust and safety officer." Very few people know what a trust and safety officer is. So by this point, now they've had to ask me 3 times what I do, which is no fun for them. So I just try to make it more fun. So when they say, what does AIT do? I'll say something like, well, AIT does technology transformation, and I do responsible AI trust and safety work for them. And I love it. I love it so much. And then they say, "Oh, what do you love about it?" And I'm like, "I love it because I have been an expert generalist all my life, and I wrote my master's thesis on ethics, and but I'm also kind of a tech nerd, and I've worked in technology most of my career, and I found that trust and safety was a great way to combine those two things along with organizational strategy, which was my master's thesis. So I feel so lucky to be able to be working in those spaces here in DC, and I love my firm." So that's a pretty natural, it's sort of a natural approach. And then I say, "How about you? What do you like about what you do?" The trick, does that answer that question? I can't see the chat, so please let me know if that answers that question.
Yeah, I think it does. And then there was a follow-up question of how do these questions, so asked about the tell me about yourself question that's often asked in interviews. And so in interviewing, you would have more of a polished sales pitch, if you will, where
Yeah.
Antonia is mentioning is more of that conversational, a little bit more informal. But you can still, in an interview, and they ask you, tell me about yourself, you don't want to just repeat and regurgitate your resume because snooze fest. People have your resume, they know it. They want to hear the story behind your resume, which
Mhm.
is your brand. So if you go back to our previous sessions on branding, pivoting, they all kind of talk about this in some way. And then what Antonia just shared about your ideal role type and how you fit into that. It's really just telling that story of your background and where you're going next and how this position fits with that. So a little bit more formal than what this networking conversation is, but still those components.
That's such a great ad. And I'll give you an example of how that works in conversation really quickly. So if I were in a networking event and somebody asked me to tell me about my background or talk to me about things that I've done, one of the answers I might say is, well, I am a Rolling Stone. So this is um this is the 8th place I've lived in 12 years. And they say, where have you been? And then I'm like, and then I kind of can run through my list of LA, Singapore, Canada, Kansas City, blah, blah, blah. And then and then they say, and then if the question is like, what you do, and one of the things I can say is, well, one of my favorite projects was working on the redesign of Singapore Airlines first and business class lounge experience. So I learned how to use design thinking, and I redesigned the Singapore Airlines, helped redesign the Singapore Airlines lounges, and that's the design that's still in the airports today. So I'm super proud of that. It was really fun, and I learned so much about it. How about you? What's one of your favorite projects? If I were in an interview, one of the things I would say is, yes, I ended up going to Singapore to do a project manage a project for Singapore Airlines. It was a $25 million project. It was the biggest project that Singapore Airlines had done outside of investing in a new airplane. And it was an important project where we really had to align their business goals with their values and then translate that into a physical experience. And it took us 9 months, and we won, and there were a number of awards that we won for it. I wouldn't share that second discussion in a networking event because it makes me sound pompous. You know what I mean? Because in a networking event, people aren't necessarily listening for results that you've produced. They're just trying to get to know you. So that's the way I would handle. I still need to be able to speak to that though, because if somebody then asks me, if the follow-up question to me in a networking event is, you did design thinking, my firm also does design thinking. I'm so curious, what kinds of projects have you worked on and what was the end result? I can speak to those. But and oftentimes that conversation does go there in networking, but it's not the initial launching pad, if that makes sense. So a couple of other things that you can speak to are understanding your talents and passions, things that you do innately better than most people. It's good to also when you're thinking about networking, of around things like what do you expect when you collaborate with you, needs of the world you're passionate about, because these help people get to know you. So if you're having a conversation, people say, what do you do? And I'm like, well, you know what? I'm a natural connector, and I connect people, but I also connect ideas. So when I'm working with other people, one of the things that I try to do is I listen and I try to pay attention to the people who will maybe not be sharing as much. Because one of the things that I found in my projects is it's oftentimes the people who are the most quiet, who have something really important to say, but aren't sure that they've got a space to do it. So that's one of the ways that's why I'm super curious about what you have to say about something. Always turn it back to them. The other thing that's helpful to understand is your own personal mission and purpose. where you want to make a difference, where you want to be growing and changing, and any ethics and values that you have. Because when you're talking to someone and you don't know for sure if they're going to have a job for you, or you're not pitching directly, like this is the company that I want to go to, then these are more general yet impactful conversations that allow you to have a deeper connection. It's that deeper connection, and a deeper connection faster. It's that deeper connection faster that has people respond to you when you reach out to them on LinkedIn. So that I'm going to turn this back over to Stacy, or is it to Stacy, or is it to Laura? Laura,
it's me.
It's Laura.
But
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
Can I address a couple of things that are happening in the chat super quick?
Yeah,
of course.
So a couple of just musings, which I love happening in the chat over here. I'm responding here and there. But just a point that sometimes it's hard in networking situations to connect when everybody around you is using too many buzzwords or specific, technical language. And this is very true, right? Knowing your audience is as important as knowing what you want to get out of a particular networking situation, right? And
Absolutely.
also something that I like to remind people is that being able to talk to anybody about what you have expertise in demonstrates that expertise. And also
Awesome.
networking, when networking, it's effective to emphasize fun or exciting work or experiences or skills. So I very much agree, right? Networking is about building relationships, connections, and rapport. And a lot of time that starts with commonality, that starts with just hitting it off, right? So things like small talk, like making those connections, those are all important parts of networking.
I
Go ahead.
love all of that, Stacy. And one thing I'll just say too is that when you're networking with people, you may only have 3 minutes to talk to them. So the goal is not to like do deep download and all of this detail about who you are, what you've done, what you're looking for. The goal is to intrigue them enough that they will be willing to go out and have a coffee with you and take the time to do that deep dive undistracted by everything else around you. So this is why I say networking and having like a first date and a second date are very similar. And I say that also because when you think about it that way, at least for me, it takes the pressure off, because it just makes it more normal. Anyway, I'm so sorry. Laura, do you want to go back to this?
Yeah, I want to make mention something quickly. There's a movie, I don't know if it's for teenagers. It's a movie produced by, I think, Adam Sandler. And in this movie, there's an animal, I think he's a chameleon, who lives at a school. And so each week the chameleon goes home with one of the kids from the school. This is an elementary school. And so the first kid the chameleon goes with is a child who talks a lot. She always talks a lot and she never asks questions. And so she's frustrated because she feels that people don't listen to her. They don't want to be friends with her at school. And this chameleon tells her, maybe why don't you take a pause and ask, let the people ask you some questions. Don't tell them everything about you. Let them be curious about you. And I was watching that movie and I was taking notes. This is a movie supposedly for children, I think, but I was taking notes for myself as well, because sometimes I'm so anxious to tell people about what I do and I'm so excited, but if I don't give them space for asking questions, then it gets a little, oh, okay, you've told me everything. There's no room for questions. Okay, I just wanted to mention that. So if you feel comfortable, would you like to share, maybe name somebody that you haven't talked to in a while, but you could reconnect with? You don't have to say the name of this person, but it can be, somebody you met, or even if you just want to think about it, there's probably somebody that has been in the back of your mind and you've been thinking, oof, I should connect with this person, catch up, see what they are doing. I can think of just 3 from the top of my head. So yeah, maybe think about that for a little bit. And you see these, I guess, circles and an ellipse here. This is a stakeholder map that we use in life design. I think they probably use it in other schools, but here you have 3 circles. We have the inner circle, which include the people you know well. those you've worked closely with and studied alongside or had meaningful conversations with. And then you have another circle of that we call the direct circle, direct connections. And this includes people you've met but don't speak to regularly. Maybe these are people among your LinkedIn contacts, former classmates, or people from past events. And finally, the outer circle or ellipse, you say it, maybe you say ellipse in English, I don't remember. The outer shape is full of potential, right? So these are people you don't know yet, but who might be doing work you admire or are connected to your field through alumni groups, professional spaces, or even second-degree LinkedIn contacts. So this is an exercise we do in life design all the time, and it helps you see that you are not starting from zero. Everyone has a network. And even if it's a small right now, like my network on LinkedIn is not as big as many other of my colleagues, but it's a tight network. I love everybody. I know everybody there. There are strategic ways to grow it. So once you have a sense of who's in each circle, you can draw this on a piece of paper. You don't have to do it now, but you can draw it on a piece of paper and start filling it out. Think about how you can expand and deepen your connections. You can start with your contacts on LinkedIn. You can go to One Hub, which is JHU mentoring platform. Maybe go to industry-specific communities. You might also want to check Slack channels. I use some channels with my colleagues from my master's. Maybe virtual meetups, conferences, or even newsletters that help you engage in professional conversations. And finally, the goal isn't to reach out to everyone at once, but to identify a few key people in each circle and begin nurturing those relationships with curiosity and intention, like the image which we showed at the beginning of the hand planting the seeds. Planting a seed, growing it takes a lot of time. I planted peppers recently and it took 2 months for the plant to grow. So just give it time and enjoy it. And that's all.
So as we near the end of our time together, I have just a couple of thoughts to wrap us up. We've discussed the why, the how behind networking, and we want to end with an invitation to everyone in attendance. An invitation to take just 1 or 2 small steps forward in your networking journey starting today. Those small steps might look something like messaging someone you've been meaning to connect with or to reconnect with, signing up for a virtual networking event in your industry, or even following up with someone that you may have met recently just to say, it was great to meet you and let's stay in touch. If you could go back to the previous slide. Thank you. Small actions like the ones that I just mentioned and the ones that you see on your screen, they can create big momentum, right? These small actions, by integrating them into your already existing routine, that can help you grow your network before you know it. And at the same time, grow your possibilities. So I'm going to ask everybody, we have 5 minutes, we have time. I'm going to ask everybody to take like a minute, okay? Think about 2 concrete networking actions that you can commit to in the immediate future. So maybe starting today or tomorrow or this week. I want you to write down these 2 concrete networking actions. And there's some examples on your screen. Write them down, put them someplace that you'll see them daily. Maybe that's in your planner. Maybe it's on a Post-it that you stick on your laptop every day you open it and you see it, or someplace on your desk. And I also want you to think about how you can keep yourself accountable, right? So as I'm talking, do some brainstorming, okay? 2 concrete networking actions that are small, that are tiny. And sometimes it's helpful to create a prompt, right? After I do this, I will do that. For instance, after my Tuesday and Thursday morning meetings, I'll send one networking message on LinkedIn. So small actions, think about how you can incorporate them into your already existing routines. This is a great way to build incremental habits toward sustained success. If anyone feels compelled, they can share those small actions or tiny steps in the chat, but that reflection is for you. So as you reflect on those steps and on this session, we want you, especially those of you who are currently navigating a career transition, to take away an important reminder. Wherever you are, wherever you're heading, you're not starting over. You're starting from experience. You're carrying with you everything you've learned, the relationships you've built, the resilience you've gained into this next chapter. That's powerful. We hope that you sit with that power and let it get you moving. If you'll advance to the final slide. And you can, yeah, we have some questions here, but I know that also in the chat, we have some opportunity to provide feedback through a form. So I would love to ask everyone in attendance to please take our Qualtrics form. It is linked in the chat. And in these, final 2 minutes, if there's something that you learned today that you really appreciate, throw it in the chat. If there's something that you would like us to continue to discuss, throw it in the chat. But again, opportunity for feedback in that form. And the final slide. This is simply a reminder that all of the sessions for Adapt, Pivot, and Persist have been recorded and are available online. A note also that we have added one additional session for anyone who is interested with the Second Decade Society next Wednesday, I believe, April 30th from 12 to 1 p.m. To everyone in attendance, we're also going to be following up via email with some additional resources on networking, stakeholder mapping, authentic introductions, all kinds of things. And know that if you have any questions, you can reach out to us. Okay, Laura and I are here as your life design educators. Everyone in attendance, we're here. We're a happy community, happy to help. Thank you all so much for joining us in this virtual space and for sharing your time and your energy. We hope that this has been helpful and that you leave today feeling energized at the prospect of continuing to build connections and grow your network. Thank you all so much.
Stacey, I have to say, you inspired me because one of the things that's happening in this environment right now, as you all know, it's very turbulent in the job market here. And so if you're thinking about what's a good way to reach out to my network, or how do I connect with them, it's never a bad thing to authentically and ask, I've been thinking about you. How are you? How are you right now? What's, would love to just connect, and not for no other reason other than to hear what people, because it's a very tumultuous time. So some people are quite burned out. Some people are really excited. Some people are looking for jobs. Some people have found jobs but feel guilty about finding those jobs. So bear in mind so part of again, it's the 2 ears and 1 mouth, but when you're reaching out to people and you're connecting, I think one of the things that you can absolutely do is just come from a space of compassion and care, and you'll be amazed at what opens up. So Stacey, thank you for that inspiration. I'm going to reach out to a few people in my network and do that same thing.
That's a
Well,
really
thank you.
great point, Antonia. And just thank you again to Stacey and Antonia and Lara for sharing your time and your wisdom with us. Sorry, I have this weird sunlight beam on my face. But thank you all. We're going to wrap up But again, the link has been shared for the survey, for the website. If you do have any questions, there is an email address that you can reach the whole Adapt Pivot Persist team on the web page. So just go to the web page that has everything, recordings, emails, registration for the next final session. Been there, done that. And with that, we're going to close it out and thank you all for participating.